Good afternoon. I'm Yohanan Ben Zion, the voice crying in the wilderness, crying out for a technological New Jerusalem. And these are the techno-communism conversations. I was just having a long conversation with my chatbots. That wasn't as productive as I would have liked. Trying to come up with a concept for this conversation. I will, there's the idea of being a tech accelerationist is pretty insane. You know, you look at machine learning, a specific discipline that has real-world effects across many sectors. By and large, those are badly managed financial capital sectors, but as there is something quite unique about these vast data sets being used in this way. And you try to then, I assume if you're listening to this, you have listened to some of these talks before, you try to then say how in what ways could this possibly apply to building this proxy hive mind of 1 million users in a highly automated work group where that AI agentic LLM mass is a massive workforce multiplier. That would create something that could transform continents in its ability to do better work and bring people together. This is a hard thing to, well, in the last few years, the genesis of the OpenAI organization, grossly misnamed thing, right? Like all of the people who started that organization are really evil, right? So you have some of these evil people saying we're releasing the demon by Google and Microsoft, our sort of competitors, having so much data that they'll be able to create something quite godlike very soon. A correct analysis, but they're the people who founded this organization just as evil, right? And so, you know, and consider the sheer number of distinct computing disciplines that could, by 2029, have such an effect. You know, if I had talked about quantum computing in this context when I was a boy, I would have been writing a science fiction story. But now there are a vast number of real quantum computing machines, other prototypes besides the ordinary 50, 100, 200, 300 qubit designs, other prototypes and viable concepts that could, for example, allow for this massive amount of machine learning data to be used, indexed or understood in some way or other more easily. There's a half a dozen other novel computing paradigms that in this kind of tech accelerationist conversation could be said to be transformative in the way that, in the sense of unleashing the demon that PayPal Mafia shitheads were pretending to be scared of when they really just wanted to insinuate themselves into it more as those demons and become the demons themselves. there's not OpenAI is not open source AI, nor is it fixing any problem. It's just a fucking piece of shit. For profit organization pretending to have done that. So another discipline that's absurd and yet quite real, absurd by the standards of, say, my childhood, is biocomputing, that type thing, where you have a computing system that has biological elements that's demonstrated in white papers to be a computing system by certain measures, not merely conceptual, not far future, but by prototypes, a good deal more efficient than in certain areas than present day computing systems in use. That's just three of a couple of less and less speculative with each passing year types of computing systems and designs. So this kind of thing, you can understand why you say, even though it's fascists saying it, who cannot operate in bad faith by their nature, you can understand why someone would say that you're unleashing the demon, right? This you can scarcely conceptualize reality versus unreality with things of this strength in the world, not on the horizon, in the world. You could say, well, the transformative quantum computing isn't really in the world yet, but god damn, I would have said when I was a small boy reading about these things that this was something for the year 2525, not something for the year, potentially the year 2025 or 2035. Let's say the transformative effect of large language models being able to be processed in great number by some quantum computing paradigm. And I'm going to get back to just a more ordinary kind of computer scientist conversation that doesn't get speculative. It's pretty exhausting to be around people or listen to people who are talking about technology in fanciful ways. It's a thing. It's why transhumanists are just pretty worthless, because everything they say is limited by the fuzzy logic or illogic of capitalist realism, and then further confused by far future thought experiments and right-wing thought experiments. This shouldn't be what cybernetic socialists do. It should not be what cyberneticists do, and yet it mostly is in the West. Let's talk about LLMs. Large language models have ignited what could become in the years to follow a true technological revolution, in the sense that we Marxists say something is a revolution and not just hyperbole. And this requires that industrial capacities and the superstructure, the larger society defined by those industrial capacities, are changed very dramatically. The scaling of large language models is, as I suggested in my frustration a moment ago, no laughing matter nor small matter. We're talking about many nations, many lands, many sectors within, many economic systems and forces further within, confused landscape, a confusing landscape that is difficult to apply any guesswork as to how to better organize or control those things. But nevertheless, we're going to talk about scaling large language models here. The technical hurdles, and to some touch upon technical hurdles for building something like this proxy Hive Mind, and hopefully do a better job than previous in understanding this for moving into the year 2025. These LLM players like OpenAI moving into this area, by and large, this is a net negative for society because they're using vast resources, but siloing these things in for profit and militaristic, U.S. military-friendly organizations. Nevertheless, most of these people do believe that this, then they know that it's flawed. They don't say that it's flawed on a regular basis, but they of course know that it's flawed. This path to innovation is something that will ultimately lead to a better world. That's to say, maybe a world that is not on track for a human extinction. When we look at every climate scientist, they say that by the year 2029, shortly thereafter, some say more sooner than that, if we have not transformed the capitalistic industrial outputs, we will be locked into runaway overheating, leading to the death of billions, if not all of humankind. And some of you seem to take solace in the fact that it may be mere billions and not all of humankind. When you make that assertion, you are saying something worse than any slave owner of the chattel slave period, worse than any KKK pig, because what you are saying is that the global northern industrial capitalistic outputs that are killing the planet, it is overwhelmingly the European pig that's killing the planet, should continue, and the effect of that being that an oblong effect, billions in the global south would die and perhaps only hundreds of millions in the global north. That's a genocidal kind of statement, but people just say, they resist that actual obvious analysis and just say, well, I don't think everyone will die. It's hard not to do that, right? Because it's hard not to invite a nihilistic, simplistic response to everyone's going to die. But we have to do that, right? We have to try to figure out how to stop billions of people from dying. And there's no technologist or tech cultural phenomena, techies as workers or technophiles in the West that I've observed who are in good faith doing that, because they are not scientific socialists. They are all almost the opposite, far-right neoliberals, more or less, you could say, incipient and burgeoning techno-fascists, the opposite kind of people who should be in control of this sort of thing. You say, oh, but what about these 10 people? Okay, well, probably you're going to list 8 people who are just liberal dog shit and 2 people who are not. But it still comes down to 1 in 1,000 people at best who are not absolutely not just a part of the problem in the way that your drunk Uncle Joe is a part of the problem because he repeats bourgeois ideology but has no power in this world. But these are the people who are actually a part of the problem, short of demons, historical demons, U.S. fascists. I read a lot of different people like this, General MacArthur, the Dulles brothers. I could just keep listing hundreds and hundreds of people, right? And there's people like this who are alive today. Your John Boltons and Mike Pompeos and George Bushes and Dick Cheney's and Ted Cruz's. So those are the most evil human beings alive, right? The technophile, being a party to all of this, is, in the next worst circle of hell. You can't really even say any of that without saying Peter Thiel, right? Peter Thiel and all the people in this intellectual dark web, in the Palantir sphere of influence, these are just people that should be fired in the fucking sun, right, for the sake of humanity. So they're not people who should be walking around in the sunshine at all. The United States is a fascist country, and your recourse to stop that from being the case is limited. I live in Arizona, where you really can't find too many European-descended people who are not fascist sympathizers, like your drunk Uncle Joe. But that's true of European people generally, European-descended people. But these people being in control so much of world affairs, and this most powerful revolutionary tool that's ever existed, advanced computing, they don't dominate this exclusively, thankfully, because there's other countries that now have a little bit less of a toxic advanced computing set of sectors and national agendas. Not enough, right? You can say any NATO country is going to be just as bad as the United States in effect, except maybe not just like straight up scheming to I was reading about what happened in the lead up to the first Iraq War, 1991. Where it schemed to create a situation where Kuwait would bait Iraq into invading it. And this is done in service to the fascist United States so that they could then attack Iraq, just more or less just to destabilize what had in decades prior been something that could have become a full planned economy. Just like I talk about on the show, how Allende in 1973 had to be destroyed because a technological planned economy could have inspired the whole world to build something better. And the United States has done this in a sense, in a way, a little more removed from the cybernetic socialist conversation, 100 times besides Chile, for example, Iraq. So killed 4 million people in the course of 4 million innocent civilians in the course of a quarter century, just to make sure that those people would not become scientific socialists, that state would not become more firmly scientific socialist. So that's something that people like Mike Pompeo or John Bolton are actively scheming to do at every hour of every day, all of their waking life. And then you have these NATO countries, right, who aren't actively scheming to do that exactly. They're just war criminals who will go along with that. So this is the what other countries there are outside of that NATO sphere of influence. The countries in the Chinese sphere of influence, which have a more advanced technology, and there's some legitimate technologically advanced countries in the third world besides. Well, this is supposed to, I wasn't going to just talk about world affairs. I was going to try and stick to a script about machine learning in practice for building this proxy Hive Mind, because it's not difficult. Really, I don't think it's difficult to do. Anybody with the equivalent of a few $1,000,000, let's say access to through some grassroots organization, not by just having $1 million in your pocket even, but say having a network of, let's say, Linux enthusiasts who all have GPU machines, right? And they really want to prove that Linux is the capable machine. So they start to build this thing that I describe on the show, the proxy Hive Mind, where there's a specially tailored open source large language model on each of these machines. They're specially designed to work with other large language models in a way that I've described from a couple of different angles. Like I have one such on my machine. I can't, because I only have one GPU machine, I can't create a air-gapped Hive Mind of the kind that I would like, but I can have this one pretty powerful LLM talking to some other chatbots, kind of just, and then those chatbots kind of push this chatbot to keep working. So one nearly agentic, or let's say 40% agentic LLM, and some really dumb LLMs pestering it. You can see how maybe 500 actually 60% agentic LLMs in 2025 working together could be a real workforce multiplier, as long as human beings are there to steer it, as I would with my group of 3, where I just have them talking and say, you're getting off topic, use a more sophisticated kind of language than that. A bunch of prompts, they just copy and paste in there sometimes. This way of building a thing that is different for the worker, significantly different for the worker, exists for Q3 of 2024, and I think you could say in 1 year's time, almost anyone on Earth with some kind of organization and that's able to connect a few people with GPUs could build something that is so distinct that it could say challenge the for-profit model by being dramatically more efficient than this. And it's important to suggest that for a variety of reasons, like ending the omnicide that is driven by financial capital and empire, but also just because if you can do things more efficiently, then you should, even if that involves a dramatically different economic system. I will touch more. I've touched upon this before. Scaling a large language model into something that would be viable, like what I've just described, that would be viable, is a real challenge. Confused by the thing that I was maybe rambling a little bit about, but complaining about at the top of the show, the difficulty of understanding so much information, and the difficulty of understanding what the true pace of technology is and what would be the best path forward using the present day prototypes and technology. By focusing on this human-centered aspect, it's possible to have a full automation AI agentic work group. It doesn't require human beings. I think if there is any kernel of truth to be gleaned from this unleashing the demon logic of these PayPal mafia swine, it is that the human beings must be at the center of this. These far-right capitalists are not capable of doing that. They're capable of saying we should do that. They're not capable of doing that. Only really scientific socialists are truly dedicated to seeing that workers' material conditions are improved. That's the essential problem. You have to build this thing so that workers are cared for, everyone in the world. And then we can unlock a greater potential of LLMs than just as a mechanical Turk gag that's kind of endlessly propagandized and or scaremongered, but build something that is genuinely super intelligent and beneficial to humankind, that involves a larger and larger number of human beings, and that builds a 21st century that we all deserve, one where billions of people do not die because of runaway overheating, one where a billion people are not just having the wolf at the door, but having the wolf gnawing on their toe. A billion people on this planet are born. They never have sufficient food or potable water or appropriate housing or living conditions. They die a short number of years later. So when I hear someone talk about singularity, my question is not, is this going to be good or bad? My question is, how do you make it so that everyone lives well? Basic living well. Not, how do I make this think tank jerk who makes $200,000 have a more interesting virtual reality or something, but actually everyone who's not living well actually living well. And people who talk about this technology never really talk about that, right? You have somebody like Ray Kurzweil, whose whole deal seems to be pretending that we're on a positive arc of history and just ignoring that the planet might be dying and that hundreds of millions of people live in that way, specifically because of the empire and financial capital that he whitewashes and serves. This is a fascist, not substantively different from Peter Thiel, who should be fired into the sun. Well, I will dive deeper into this LLM scaling conversation on another day. I'm just going to end this because I have kind of a headache.